So because I believe that God does all things in order in His timing. So you all have an agenda in front of you. Principally, we wanted to have the opportunity to go over a couple of things that are interrelated. This is not the end of our process. This is really a continuation and probably the first of a series of framing conversations. And the way that I work best is that I'd love to have my processes informed. So sometimes ideas are generated from others. So for me, the conversation around the reestablishment or resurrection of the Art Commission happened in a conversation with Chuck. Chuck brought to my attention that this would be a critical piece, probably in the spring of 2014. And he began informing me, and Casey and I began to try to understand what that was. Like, do we have an Arts Commission? Do we have an Arts Commission? And then Chuck came in again and met with me. And so I want to, if you all will allow me to give Charles yes. Appreciation. None of us is ever as smart as all of us, right? And so I really appreciate that because it's really answering a need. And in subsequent conversations with others in the artist community, I've been able to really begin to flesh it out. The other piece of legislative priority for me that we began thinking about last year, towards the end of last year, the beginning of this year, is something that has a working title, and you all will also help me come up, because especially you creatives in the room, help me come up with a title that's a real good title. But I've just been calling it the Protection of Cultural Institutions Act, and that really came up and arose out of conversations that had begun in 2014 when I had received messages that police officers were coming out to the Malonga Center. And the Malonga Coscalord Center is a deeply personal center of mine. Malonga Coscalord was a family friend, so named in his honor. But it is a place that has nurtured my son, who is a drummer. Many of you all know that Victor's a drummer and percussionist, who has been under the tutelage of Takuma King, Destiny Muhammad, Kev Choice, E.W. Wainwright. So this is really his community. I'm not the artist in the family, he is. But we have given to Baya, to Children in Flight. We've nurtured the center, we've donated. Michael Lane was a personal friend of my husband. And so the Malonga, just this notion that that energy was going on over there, we started thinking, well, this is a cultural institution that needs to be protected. What would it mean to come up with some kind of act that would protect a cultural institution? In the midst of researching that, we had some other things that began to arise that were brought to our attention in 2015. Facebook, Change.org positions around Humanist Hall and what that has meant in terms of our culture. Conversations around the drummers at Mosswood. It was actually coincidentally at the June celebration when we were honoring Takuma at the Infirmary, when Baba Hodge and Greg Hodge had told me that they were no longer drumming at Malonga. And I was like, what's up? When did you guys stop drumming at Malonga? And he said it was out of police contact.
Mosswood.
So at Mosswood, thank you. That's the other end this afternoon, thank you, Theo. That they weren't at Mosswood. And I was like, what is that about? And so I just started trying to inquire among Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec staff didn't know that they had stopped drumming. And there were no police citations, but there was contact that they had reported. And so that began to expand again the definition of, hello. That again, to begin to broaden, what does it mean around protection of institutions and what are we doing? Kind of simultaneous in this time in 15, we had the Red Moon incident with the Samba Funk drummers and friends that had just left the Malonga Center and gone over to the lake. And then we were getting text messages and verbal messages about churches that we weren't able to corroborate immediately, but we began to say, wow, what is this movement and how can we do it? So out of those inquiries came this thing around the city's existing noise ordinance. And so that's what I'm saying. Some of these things are related or interrelated, but I'm seeing them right now in 3 different buckets. So the protection of cultural institutions piece is separate and apart from, and I'm inviting you all to help me think through all of those things so we can come up with really good legislation that's not overly prescriptive or we inadvertently leave somebody out that we leave them vulnerable or becomes too regimented that it's not artistically useful. The existing noise ordinances, we've begun to meet with the administration around clarifying, amplifying, so there's the administrative direction around the vague ordinance, and then there's the rewriting of the ordinance. And then this third piece, which is really something that I started in 2013 with a desire to do, but had some difficulties getting landowners to the table, had to do with the naming of a Black Business and Arts District on 14th Street. Now, in part, this was my passion and desire to lift up and amplify the participation of the African-American voice in shaping Oakland's identity. There was a lot of pain in District 3 around the loss of 7th Street, and where we have, welcome. Is there enough clearance right there, you guys, to let him get there? Thank you. So I reached out to Jeffrey very early on, and then like all of us, capacity bandwidth, and then just earlier this year, Jeffrey was like, yes, Lynette, I think this is something we could do, and we began to get ideas around what that would look like. So initially for me, I was looking at the African American Museum and Library, which I think is an underutilized treasure that we want to give some additional love and support to within the district and within my advocacy. I thought about Jeffrey's and who Jeffrey is, both in terms of artistic, political, entertainment space. It's a place where we've gathered. I thought about Joyce Gordon's gallery as really leading the wave of downtown. These are just people I know, right? And then other people began to add, and then the Wellness Center, of course, on 14th and Allen. And then other people began to amplify and add to that, like letting me know about the sports bar, it's a Black-owned, there's Uncle Willie's, that's Black-owned. Wayne Jordan is an African-American who like owns half the city block down there, and then Jeffrey owns that piece. And so being able to utilize 14th Street, not as the it-all, be-all, but as a place where we can kind of name and amplify. And so it is also still very loosely in concept, but there are a couple of things that inform that for me in my mind. 14th Street, East 14th Street, east of the lake, is now called International Boulevard. And the council renamed it International as a way of honoring the contributions of various ethnic groups that you could find along East 14th. And it was a way of saying that we're an international city, and it was a way of codifying or commemorating, I should say, probably commemorating the fact that we have all this diversity. So as I continue to think about the Black Business and Arts District coming west of the lake on 14th Street, it seems to me to go along with the ethnic theming of 14th Street, and that on this side of 14th Street, the Black Business and Arts District, also a working title. You all can work with me on that, because we played with business, arts, technology, culture, technology, arts. You know, we've played with a number of things. So right now, it's got the working moniker of BBAD. I kind of like that. I'm feeling kind of good about that Black Business and Arts District. So those are the three things that we wanted to dive into today. And again, this is just the initial conversation, the opportunity for me to hear from the collective wisdom, for you all to help me prioritize, to understand some of the other sensitivities. And I should also say, in this piece around the Arts District, at the beginning of the year, I had the opportunity to begin talking, beginning of 15, in conversation with Marvinette, who at that same time was queuing up the celebration. I think it was the 50th, Marvin?
Yes.
50th anniversary of the Black Arts Movement, and he also had a desire around 14th Street as the Black Arts Movement District as a way of commemorating that specific art movement. And I was like, well, Marvin, maybe there's a way that we can collapse these things, because I've been out there talking about this arts district on 14th Street, and so maybe we can do both of those things. And so those are the things that have been percolating, and at this point I'm now creating the bandwidth in my legislative calendar that these pieces of legislation are very important, and in addition to the other work that we're doing. But it's real important that we hear from you all in the creative and artistic and entertainment community, that you all begin to give some shape to this. And so helping me get this done in the District 3 office, I want many of you know, but let me introduce to you our Director of Constituency here, Bridget Cook. So Bridget previously handled constituency concerns for everything, for all of the neighborhoods west of the 980, with a reorganization within my office in Casey's transition. Bridget has now taken on constituency services for the entire district. So her job is doubled, and but she's really focused in on those things. She also is the liaison to our faith faith advisory team and has been working with our creative. And even though it wasn't necessarily her concerns, we've done a lot around our nightclubs and entertainment groups when they've gotten into trouble, and has been handling permitting issues for the various festivals and those kinds of things. So some of you all have interfaced with her in that capacity. Many of you have known Casey Farmer, who was both my campaign manager, came into office and was doing our policy and legislative work. We have now got the Casey upgrade model. Alex Marquesi. Alex is a recent GSPP grad, Goldman School of Public Policy at Cal, Go Bears graduate, and it comes to our office with a real focus around housing and displacement issues. It's going to be helping us move a whole other slate of legislation around housing. Also has a background in some workforce pieces that are exciting to me, and will be the one who's actually going to be drafting those legislative pieces that we've talked about earlier. So you'll interface a lot with Alex as we're diving deeper into what you all want to see, what you're informing in this process. So lastly, in my framing remarks, there is a great deal of concern from my colleagues about each of these pieces that I've said. Immediately upon the media reports around the churches, folks came to me like, Madam President, what are we going to do? This doesn't make any sense to us. We need to protect our churches and institutions. Abel Guillen and I work very closely on the clarifying the amplified music, non-amplified music around the lake. We have the signs down. He's very much interested in this. Annie Campbell Washington has said that she's coming forward this week with me on actually naming a task force to help guide the process around the arts and entertainment, or arts commission. You all give us, is it arts and entertainment? What does it mean in terms of this commission? Again, still working very loose frameworks. So with that,